This one time in Spain, in our early days of living in Barcelona, we made a startling food discovery. Our go-to pizza place at the time was the now shuttered Pomodoro, and it was generally a fantastic Neapolitan joint. But one item on their erstwhile menu gave us a good laugh and remained a running joke on every Pizza Friday in the flat. The Pizza Americana was topped with French fries and cut-up hot dogs. Let that sink into the appropriate level of your brain. My wife, Jessica, was particularly scornful of this bizarre concept. Her take, despite the name, was, "Who would enjoy that abomination in a million years?" The boys and I followed her lead and agreed, until the moment that Jessica had to travel for work. The Southworth boys were all alone with the Pomodoro menu. And yes, it was Friday. Somewhere in the midst of our collective meditation on whether this monstrosity may actually be edible or even appealing, the delivery app sends me an alert to the driver's imminent arrival. This was the moment, my friends. This was the big reveal, the first bites, the be-all, end-all of Kids Menu meets Naples. Ah, but here's the rub. Imagine what happens to a rather hot pizza when the driver stops very, very short at a red light. All of that lovely topping rapidly divorces the crust and splatters the sides and the top of the box pretty damned effectively. This was a sign. The pizza gods were making a point that day, my friends. My name is Howie Southworth. I travel, I eat, I cook, and then I write fancy words about all of it. My cookbooks are loaded with wild stories and fabulous bites, and I've shared plenty of my own adventures. But now, I want to hear somebody else's for a change. Sauced in Translation is a timely podcast spanning the globe of food, spinning tales of lavish meals and epic gastronomic failure. Join us for some well-deserved armchair globetrotting. Let's get saucy. My guest today is Monica Eng. Monica is the co-host of the Chewing podcast along with Chicago Tribune reporter Louisa Chu. Get it? Chu Eng? Brilliant. Having also spent years at the Tribune, Monica is currently a reporter with Curious City in Chicago on Public Radio's WBEZ, with a primary focus on food, culture, health, and the environment. Needless to say, Monica has been very busy. Apart from fantastic and timely topics and interviews on their podcast, yes, go subscribe now, Monica and Louisa have this regular segment on Chewing called Will She Eat It?, in which they challenge one another to sample seemingly absurd food and drink. Oreo Spam burgers, Chinese baijiu, sweet steak sandwiches, Filipino duck embryos. You get the picture. I've been a guest of theirs twice, and thank goodness they keep that ritual to themselves. Here's our chat. Monica, nice to be talking to you.
Same here, Howie. Good to see your face.
Even though the rest of the audience will not see my face. So I'm going to tell the story of how we met because it actually has a remarkable impact on my life. So it's April 2016, and I arrive in Chicago to speak at an Asia Society panel about Chinese food with Martin Yan. All I knew was that the panel would be moderated by one Monica Eng from WBEZ. And we were supposed to meet my first night there. I got a text message to meet Monica outside the hotel, and then she whisks me away to an underground Chinese food court. Now, I had never been to Chicago before, so that was my first impression of that magical city. Monica, you did that.
Oh, that's so nice to know that it was a magical experience.
Oh, it was a fantastic food as well. But, you know, if someone was going to get right to my heart, that's the way to do it. I don't know a city, but if you take me to the best Chinese food in town, you're my best friend.
Well, you really helped us out, too, because, you know, you were saying, oh, these spicy crawdads are so popular in China right now. And so like, okay, let's get them and start tearing them apart.
Oh, my goodness. I forgot about the crawdads. That was a fantastic addition to the meal. My favorite that night happened to be the pork jowls.
Right. The pork head wrapped in a pancake, which actually was fantastic. And it's haunted me ever since. I've wanted to go back and get it, and I have a few times.
Do they do delivery?
I have not done delivery the whole time this whole year. I mostly do curbside pickup. We've
done a mixture of both. And let me tell you something. There's quite a growing list of things that I hope never go away after this era. And one of those is the ease of online ordering and timed pickup.
It's great. And curbside where I just say, hey, I'll be in the junky Honda CRV outside. with like the big dent on the door. Just drop it in my thing. I've pre-tipped.
Out of this world.
And I think it helps the restaurants too, because that way they can keep their inventory and their timing rolling, and they don't have a lot of backups.
Yes, I am doing my part, let's say, to keep the restaurant industry afloat around me.
Nice.
Speaking of this weird era that we're in, how has it impacted your food life?
Well, I've been cooking a lot. And, I keep asking myself, why do I feel like I'm always doing dishes? Well, when you have 4 people who are eating almost 3 meals at home every day, you get more dishes. But I love it. I think that, as much as I love restaurants and restaurateurs and I want to keep them healthy, I think cooking your own food really does make you healthier, because you know everything that goes into it. And if you're going to have a cup of sugar in your dinner, you're going to be the one to put it in there. And you can choose your oils, and you can choose the oils that you like best. So yeah, I've been cooking a lot of Indian food. My daughter decided to become a vegetarian during the pandemic. So it's, we've got giant bags of lentils and, 5, 6 different types of lentils, and giant bags of chickpeas and different types of chickpeas. And a relative gave us sort of a knockoff Instapot. So dried beans and pulses are the day here. And you can see I've got all these Indian spices here. So we make a lot of South Asian food and a lot of Chinese food and a lot of Puerto Rican food. I'm also Puerto Rican, but tons of cooking, like everybody else, a ton of sourdough.
Were you on team banana bread for a while?
No. I know a lot of people were really into banana bread, but one of the kids in our house really likes smoothies. So anytime the bananas start getting brown, we immediately peel and freeze.
I am a big member of Team Banana Bread. We have done so many different types that I learned something silly like mini white chocolate chips will melt into the cake as you bake it, whereas big hunky dark chocolate will not melt whatsoever. Now, something like semi-sweet will be somewhere in between.
And do you want the melting, or do you want to have those different textures?
I keep going back to unadorned cinnamon vanilla banana bread. Straight recipe. I keep going back to it. And then sourdough, I've been on the sourdough kick for years now. So when everybody
Before
else
it got cool.
When everybody else came on board, I was like, I guess welcome, but you're going to drop it too, because it's kind of complex.
Well, the great thing is you can be at home to babysit it all the time. I used to bring my sourdough autolies in the basket of my bicycle and then ride to work and then babysit it all day. And it's so much easier to do it at home.
We have also gotten into Indian food. Well, but I should be more specific. We have gotten so into tikka masala. Specifically, chicken is where it began. But as people started to air their opinions in my home, this one prefers shrimp tikka masala. This one prefers paneer tikka masala. My kids love the original chicken tikka masala. So every Indian night, I find myself making 3 different tikka masalas. But it's delicious.
Yeah, and so can you walk me through how you do it?
My tikka masala is straight up. The last time I made it was 2 days ago, in fact, and I did a buttermilk marinade with all of your regular spices. I'm a garam masala guy rather than any other curry powder. I love garam masala, the cumin, the chilies, and the garlic and the ginger, of course, overnight, and that's the best marinade that I've made. I use those same spices when I then make the tomato, and I use coconut milk and not cream when I make my tikka masala.
Oh, I think Southern curries do use a lot of coconut milk.
It is outstanding. Now, you are a traveler by trade and a traveler by person. But if you recall your last big trip, do you recall what you ate?
I think the last big trip we actually took out of the country was Mexico City, which is one of my favorite places to eat. I never really like going into restaurants. I just like eating on the street. I like saying, "Oh, there's a long line at that taco stand. Let's go." And so I love eating in Mexico City. But we did go into a restaurant for chiles en nogales, which are the stuffed poblano peppers with the white blanket of sauce and then the beautiful ruby red pomegranates on top.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, and it's just it's so visually striking. It looks like the Mexican flag with the green poblano chilies and then the white sort of almond sauce and then the red pomegranates.
Oof.
So Mexico City, their transportation is unbelievable. Their food's unbelievable. And you never have to go indoors because the food on the street is so great.
I am an embarrassment of a traveler from the United States of America. I went to Mexico exactly once. It's more likely that you're going to find me on the other half of the planet. And it's a bizarre thing, I know. But when I was in college in California, that was just a weekend thing that I did. And it happened a grand total of once. But man, and the fish tacos, as far south on the Baja Peninsula as I could get, were out of this world. But I hear some great things about Mexico City.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place. And, you know, in Chicago, you can wait sometimes 20 minutes for a train, but you use the subway there and it's like every 30 seconds, the train's there and you just get anywhere all over the city. And, you know, terrific weather. Obviously, the smog isn't the greatest, but you know, smog, having been to China, so it's not going to be a huge surprise to you.
Anywhere else in the world I've been that has been smoggy is relatively crystalline blue. To be in Beijing on some of the worst days is just stunning. It is stunning to look out a window and not be able to see. We have 2 boys, and they're now in their tweens. When they were younger, we worked with an au pair. Our first au pair was from Mexico City, and it was very confusing because if you're Mexican, you don't call it Mexico City.
Right.
You call it Mexico. Every time she referred to her home city, I said to myself, city.
That's funny.
City. That's because I'm a dumb American. So what else did you eat? What else did you eat on that trip? You were there for presumably multiple days.
I always loved going to a place called El Morro, which is it's a churreria where they make churros, you know, and you think of those as like, bad festival food. But these churros aren't filled. They're very thin. And this place has been there for, I'd say, like 90 years. And the waitresses still wear the blue outfits and hats with the white apron. And they bring you hot chocolate and churros. And it's got all this wonderful tile. And if the sun comes in right, I can't stop taking pictures of the guys pulling the churros out of the hot oil. And then they'll take some churros and then make them into a spiral. It's like a cookie with ice cream in the middle. And I'm usually not a sweets eater, but I love that. And it's got just this wonderful, wonderful atmosphere, like you've gone back 100 years in Mexico City. So I would always recommend people to go to the original El Morro churreria. In recent years, they've gotten all these little outlets, kind of like Krispy Kreme has like opened up, you know, when they opened up everywhere in the 90s. But go to the original one. It's wonderful. We also went, I can't remember, what is the name of the town where everybody's on boats? It's like the Venice. I'll remember it by the end of this podcast. We can look it up. But you go there and then you rent a boat and then you get your gondolier. And then everywhere you go, like another boat will pass and it'll be 3 guys who will be your mariachi band. And they'll jump on board your boat and they'll play all the songs you want. They can do boleros, they can do mariachi music, norteño music. But then there'll also be boats that come by. We're selling quesadillas. We're selling pulque. I don't know if you know what pulque is. It's a corn-based liquor. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, yep, okay, here, 10 pesos. Please give me some pulque. And like, we're selling micheladas, which is beer with clamato and lime and tajin. Or we're selling rice and beans. Or we're selling chicken. So as all the boats pass by, you get all your different foods. And it's sort of like, you know, a long trip down a river, eating all these wonderful foods, having entertainers join your boat. Xochimilco.
Xochimilco from Mexico City.
Yeah, so it's like you just get a taxi and say, take me to Xochimilco. You get to Xochimilco, you go to the boat landing, you make a deal. Okay, we want a 3-hour excursion. All right, jump on this boat and here we go. And it's like dinner, dance, music. It all comes to you. It jumps on your boat. And, you know, who wants to buy souvenirs? It's like going to a festival while staying on your boat.
Also sounds like a neat way to eat too. I mean, if you go there with that focus, how fun is that? I'm going to take you back to churros for a moment. Are you Mexican churros or are you Spanish churros?
I like both.
You have to choose one, though.
Well, I mean, I always love when I arrive in Madrid, the first thing we do is we say, okay, we're going to stay awake. Let's go get churros and chocolate. And I love that. And, dipping it in basically what seems like a Hershey bar that they put in the microwave. And it's like, it's not like Swiss Miss. This is like chocolate and dipping. So they're different animals, but I love my Mexican churros. And I love my Spanish churros.
In a place like Madrid, we found that there is a distinct difference between churros and porras are unridged. Oh. So it's a fat, round, and long.
More like a youtiao?
It's like even youtiao, because youtiao, the Chinese, I hate this. I hate I'm about to say it, but the Chinese cruller, it's not it. But it's two pieces of dough that are then twisted. So there are actually ridges on a youtiao, but the porras are smooth, and a churro comes out of the star-shaped extruder. Yeah. So it has ridges. But only in Madrid have I ever been able to get people to decipher between the two accurately. Even in Barcelona, there are churro places that call them churros, even though they are porras.
So it's a porras. I don't think I've had one. Is it more like a corn dog?
The shape, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And porras are typically also extruded directly into the hot oil in a spiral, sort of like a funnel cake.
Like a jalebi.
Like a jalebi.
To mix up all these different cuisines.
Go.
Yeah.
Another Spain trivia thing I'll tell you, that the most creative spin-off of the churro I've ever had is served as a sandwich vehicle in a small restaurant in Barcelona, and it's called a churronut.
Ah.
Right. So they took the cronut concept and we could do hybrid too. Do you have a favorite travel food story?
Favorite would probably be Osh, Kyrgyzstan, which is right on the Uzbek-Kyrgyz border. Mm-hmm. Back when I was a young lady and I married my college sweetheart, we moved to Uzbekistan to do his field work. My ex-husband is an anthropologist. And right in June, around my birthday, June 18th, he says, I'm going to do some work with UNHCR, United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, and we're going to be going to the Kyrgyz, Tajik, Uzbek, where they kind of all get together. So we went to Osh, and then he said, I'm going with the High Commissioner Command. We're going to Tajikistan, and you're going to stay here. There's a hotel over there. You can stay there. And I'm like, okay, it's my birthday, but I guess I'll stay by myself. And that's just when the Peace Corps had just come into Central Asia. So I tried to look for a Peace Corps volunteer who might be in town. My Uzbek wasn't great. My Kyrgyz was worse. And there was this nice boy. I think his name was Tom something. It's terrible. I don't know. But he rescued me on my birthday. And he said, let's go down to the Osh market. Osh later, a few years ago, turned out to be the scene of an enormous massacre where Uzbeks killed Kyrgyz and vice versa. But at this point, it was very, very, very calm. And in June, in Osh, if you go to the bazaar, the cherries are like this big, just enormous, beautiful cherries. And it was like 50 cents. And I got 2 kilos of them. And I brought them back to my hotel. And then I heard all this noise in the hotel. And I realized I was staying in a brothel. So, and the Peace Corps boy, he knew, he's like, oh, why are you staying there? He said, you should stay at my house. Okay, as a young 22-year-old woman, why not? And he said, I'm going to show you the best lagman in all of Osh. So we went back to the bazaar, and there was this huge, strong guy with this big lump of dough that he kept stretching, and soon it was hundreds of wonderful, flexible strands of noodles that you often see in Lanzhou. And I'm sure Lanzhou, Lagman, there's some sort of connection because on this border, it's not far from China. Yeah. So I was like, wow, look at those noodles he made. And then he throws them into a cauldron of beautiful boiling broth. And then he fishes them out and then he puts them in the ceramic bowl. And then he puts the broth on top and then puts some onions and garlic and cilantro and scallions. And he hands it to me. And I tried it and I said, this is the most wonderful soup I've ever had in my life. These are the most wonderful cherries I've had in my life. It'd be great if I could share those with my husband, but he ran off to Tajikistan. And then we went on this old rickety Soviet style, Ferris wheel. I thought I was going to die, but we didn't. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. So a lot of the infrastructure just wasn't there. Like the guy who normally would have fixed the Ferris wheel. And then he said, well, why don't you come to my house for dinner? I'm going to make tortillas. This boy from Iowa made these tortillas with flour and some cooking oil he found and rolled them out. And I had a Mexican dinner in the middle of Osh near the Uzbek-Kyrgyz border. And I thought, this is the most wonderful birthday ever. And I'll just have to tell my husband when he gets back, boy, did I have a great time with this young man whose name I can't even remember now. But I remember the food so vividly. And it was just terrible that I tell everybody, oh, you want to eat? Well, go to Osh, because now Osh is just known as a place of a massacre.
I don't know if you saw my side of the video when you said that you related cherries and the best cherries to Kyrgyzstan. I love the cherries in Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan was one of the places that I've been that I ate the best, which took me by the most surprise. Right? Because here you are, you're in the middle of Central Asia. It's an ex-Soviet republic. You don't associate it with good food. You associate it with the Russian foods, perhaps.
Right.
The first meal that I had was borscht and fish head soup. And it was exactly what I thought it was going to be like. And then I went for a hike and had the best cherry of my life.
Yeah,
the best cherry of my life.
Yeah, I mean, they're huge and sweet and delicious and juicy.
Well, I wish I would have gone down to Osh for reasons that I don't need to get into. There was a revolution involved, and I ran away to Lake Issyk.
Yeah.
On the shores, there are all these cherry orchards, and I think that it was perhaps the romance of the moment. It was a hot day. It was May. It was cherry season. It's right exactly when they were picking the cherries off the tree. Girl comes down from a ladder, hands me a cherry, and it's that cherry that's 78, 80 degrees, and you pop it in your mouth, and it's willing to just fall apart because it's that right stage of ripeness. Never had a better cherry, and I'm so happy that somebody else has a good food Kyrgyzstan story. You asked, and so I'll tell you. Lakman equals ramen. Equals.
Oh, right. Ramen.
Equals ramen.
Yeah.
But Lakman, I mean, it is a Central Asian origin. It is not natively Chinese, certainly not natively Japanese, but it made its way all the way east. But I believe if you refer to like Lanzhou is where you're going to see a lot more heat in ramen. So you're going to add chilies when you get there. And then when you get into Japan, they do all kinds of wacky stuff. Did you know that in Japan, ramen is still considered a Chinese meal?
I didn't know that. Wow,
they never claimed to adopt it as a Japanese cuisine. Huh. Oh my gosh.
Did you have any lagman when you were in Kyrgyzstan?
No. And I'll tell you why I didn't have lakman. I was spending my time more in pilmeni and cheating on jiaozi. I was eating pilmeni, which I just couldn't get over because particularly with the cherry topic, pilmeni with potato and cherry is delicious and completely unexpected. If you ever have the opportunity, and I've never seen it commercially made, if you're going to make your own, you need to try mashed potato with sour cherry in the same pilmeni.
Oh, you mean together?
Oh, together. My first night.
Savory or sweet or savory and sweet?
It's a little bit of both. So sour cherry has so many savory applications. We were in Bishkek. My host, Boris, was like, oh, you got to go to this place. It just serves pilmeni. And I was like, okay, dumplings, take me there. The first one we had, I bit into it. He said, don't worry, you know both flavors that are in there. And I was so taken aback. It was out of this world.
That's so interesting. I've never had potato with cherry. And in Central Asia, the small dumpling, they'll call it in Uzbek, it's chuchvara. And you fold it like a tortellini. The pelmeni are often more like a circle with a ridge on the outside, but these are little hats. And so I'd sit there with the women for hours and hours, and we would just fill up the boards. And of course, they'd laugh at how horrible my chuchvara looked. But, after about 700 of them, they started to look okay.
Yeah, I still, after all these years doing dumpling applications, I'm still terrible at sealing and folding.
them. Yeah,
terrible.
my pleating is terrible with jiaozi or anything like that.
I have an easier time folding baozi. So if it's a more yeasty dough, there's something about the delicacy of doing folds on a thin piece of pasta. I can't do it. What is your worst travel food story?
Well, I hate to, always, the one I got sick. But after living in Uzbekistan for about 8 months, we were there for a year and a half to do my ex-husband's field work. We're like, we need a vacation. We need a vacation. We're going to go to Pakistan. Yeah, because we were just tired of you go into government stores and it's like, look, there's a sponge and a bucket. Yeah, we can buy something today. Or, there wasn't much in the post-Soviet period. The infrastructure had broken down. Like there was no coal in our village, so we just wore coats all winter through the snow. Things had not caught up to the post-Soviet period where these countries could live on their own. So we were excited to go. I mean, there was still decent, plov on the street and some shashlik on the street, and that was like kebabs and rice. But I was like, we could go and we get new flavors. We're going to go to Pakistan. So we arrive in Lahore and we stay at the Green Hotel, and it's like, let's go, and I'm like, oh, look at all the stuff to buy. It's not just a bucket and a sponge at a store. And I said, look at all this food and the flavors. So I ate everything in sight. And I think, it's like, oh, look at that fried, let's get some pakoras. Let's get some nihari. Let's get some fried, it's like a potato bhaji. And it's always that one thing that you think in your mind, that's the one thing that made me sick. But I ate all of it and suddenly I was feeling dizzy. And then we went back to the hotel and I said, I can't do this. I don't know what I ate. And then I remember the TV was on, and when TV's in Urdu, it'll be, mostly Urdu, but then they'll just say words in English. And anytime they said a word that was sounded like food, I was like, turn it off. I can't hear any food words ever again. I'm never going to, get over this. And it was just like, how could I hate to hear any food words? Well, because I was feeling so, so bad. Luckily, it was a 12-hour thing. And then I was back eating for our next 2 weeks in Pakistan, where we went and we visited friends. Oh, and I totally screwed up. We landed in Peshawar, not Lahore. We went to Lahore later. So we landed in Peshawar, and which is well known for its arms bazaar. And
did not know that.
Right. Well, they got wonderful bazaars, but including a very famous arms bazaar in Peshawar. This was when there was still a lot of fighting, and unfortunately. But in addition to the arms bazaar, they had great food bazaars and great clothing bazaars and bazaars for everything. It's just I overdid it, and my stomach was not accustomed to the particular bacteria of that place, and I felt terrible.
It is a really weird club to be a part of. But if someone tells you their tale of getting food poisoning of any ilk, you know exactly how that person felt. So you're telling me this story and I'm saying, oh man, I now want to ask you a very important question about that. How had that changed, or how has that changed your relationship to Pakistani food?
The only thing I have an aversion to is a potato bhaji, which is just a fried piece of potato, because that, for some reason, I blamed it all on that.
My food poisoning chopped out an entire food genre in China for me for decades.
And what was that?
I ate a plate of bad, cold fried noodles. It was an appetizer. And I almost specifically blamed the peppers that were used, these chili peppers that were used. And it's only happened once to me in China, and I got taken down. But for 2 decades went by, I could not look at a bowl of noodles.
And so how are you today on it?
I'm actually better. I still can't wrap my head around fried noodles, but soup noodles, I'm real good. So, Monica, we've reached that point in the show where I'm going to ask you 5 fill-in-the-blank questions.
I'm ready.
Blank will be my last meal.
Rice and beans using my Puerto Rican grandmother's recipe.
It's touching.
So comforting.
It's emotional. It's a memory. I cook blank to impress people.
I guess that would be like any sort of patachoux, gougere, or cream puff or eclair, or a really nice loaf of sourdough bread.
I cook blank to comfort myself.
That might be jok, or as they call it in the north, kanji, which is basically like a rice porridge. And, often after Thanksgiving, I'll take the turkey and make a broth and then make turkey jok and then put all sorts of nice tangy things, whether it's a chili oil or preserved vegetable or peanuts on top.
There is something about that. It's a texture thing. It's a temperature thing. It's a deep flavor thing. Man, when you mentioned making it out of turkey stock, that is out of this world brilliant. If you mention turkey stock, the word rich comes to mind. And that is a perfect thing to use for a good congee. I would erase blank from the food world.
Probably churrascarias, because a whole bunch of them opened in Chicago at once. And I do think meat is pretty bad for the earth, and it does involve killing animals, a subject I've dealt with for a while in writing. But a churrascaria, you pay one fee, and then you try to shove as much meat into your body as possible to justify that fee. And I've been that person, and I don't like it when I'm that person. And I've seen those people, and knowing just how hard meat is on the earth and what it requires in terms of a sacrifice from the earth and from the animal, to just see it as how many pounds you can jam in your mouth because you want to get your money's worth, it breaks my heart.
I agree with you. I get those points, and I understand them from an ecological standpoint. I simply can't do it. Like, I physically can't do it. I tried to do it one night. I got very, very, very shallowly into the meal, and I just couldn't. I had to give up. I ate whatever vegetables they did have, as everybody else around me gorged on meat. It's not that I couldn't watch people eat meat. It's not that I'm opposed to using animals as food in many cases, but it simply was not something I could physically do. But they came by with those swords of meat, and I was just turned off. I don't know why. Had no reason. No reason. I asked that question, by the way, incorrectly. What would you remove or erase from the food world? My original question was, the one food I would erase from the earth is blank.
Well, having been a health writer, I think soda. I think soda has done the most damage to people's endocrine systems. I think it's given more people metabolic syndrome, and diabetes, which is one of the biggest contributors to our healthcare dollars and one of the biggest killers of Americans today, especially people of color. Makes them lose their limbs, makes them lose their feet, and it has basically no nutritional value. So probably soda.
We do use SodaStream. So
we're a big SodaStream family here.
Oh my God. How quickly do you go through, and this is an honest intellectual question, because I don't know where I fall on the scale of bad to good users of a SodaStream. How many CO2 cartridges do you go through in, say, a month?
Probably 2. Sometimes during the pandemic, so many more. We usually have 8 bottles in the fridge at any given time, ready to be fizzed up. Yeah. How many actual bottles are you? We're probably using 2 to 3 bottles a day.
It's become this weird obsession. If I start making the bottles in the morning, I will go through 4 bottles a day alone, myself. If I keep myself from starting down that path and have a green tea day, I can lessen the number. But it's become somewhat of an obsession of mine. The last fill in the blank is for dinner tonight.
Lots of leftovers, because Wednesday is the day we usually go and buy our groceries. So we're dealing with a lot of leftovers. So I've got something called khichdi, which is it's lentils. It's yellow lentils with rice and turmeric and some coconut milk and spices. So I'm going to finish up that. I'm going to finish up some mushroom tortellini that's still in the fridge. I'm going to finish up a little piece of Mexican chorizo with eggs that's still in there. This is like the least, this is the least favorite night of the kids, because we're finishing up everything that's in there, and then we'll go buy some more. And then a nice salad with lemon, parm, and olive oil.
I wish more people were into leftovers. I am a fan. There are two types of food personalities. You are either a leftovers person or not a leftovers person. I married a woman who is not a leftover person. I will have the most brilliant, and I'll use tikka masala because we just finished that up today. We will have that in the house, and she will make a fresh lunch for herself. Sometimes things are just better the next day, you know?
Oh, yeah. When the flavors have a chance to really melt.
Tikka masala is one of those.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Jessica is otherwise a perfect human being.
Yes.
Because if anybody listens to this, that's the message, okay? That's the message. Hey, Monica, thanks for being on the show. I've been lucky to be a guest of yours twice on Chewing, and that was spectacular. I'm hoping that this was at least a quarter as much fun.
This was so much fun. It's much more fun being the guest than the host, and you are a wonderful host.
Well, thank you. Like I said before, I am the perfect face for a podcast. To all of you wonderful, intelligent listeners out there, remember to subscribe to this show, follow me on Instagram, and find our books with your favorite seller. Those are One Pan to Rule Them All, Kiss My Casserole, How to Cook Anything in Your Dutch Oven, Chinese Street Food, and the forthcoming Off the Top of My Head, Recipes, Rants, and Ravings of an American Cook Obsessing in Barcelona. Until next time, stay saucy and eat well.